Okay, so for this this next demonstration, we're going to use the magnetic powder and the magnetic applicator. When I say magnetic powder, not to be confused with metallic powder, because there are certain powders that have powdered aluminum or other metal components in them that tend to have health and safety issues. So just to differentiate, the metallic powder gets used with a fiberglass filament brush. The magnetic powder is the stuff that we are using, and that is used with the magnetic applicator. So I've just charged my fingers with a little bit of moisture. Again, we have a non-porous surface. It's hard, it's smooth, it's flat, it's white, so a dark powder, you can either, a dark powder is going to be the option, either using granular or magnetic powder. Now the choice is yours when it comes to whether you use a magnetic or a granular powder. My preference is, if I have the opportunity of using magnetic powder, that would be my go-to. And the reasons for that is, for starters, because it has the iron filings in it, the powder itself is heavier, it has less of a tendency of getting airborne, so now there's less of a chance of you breathing it in or end up getting powder, clouds of powder on you and kind of going home with a black ring around your shirt collar or whatever, or up your nose. It tends to settle more rapidly on the surface and stay put. The other advantage I find to the magnetic powder is that by using the magnetic applicator, and reclaiming any excess powder, it tends to develop a cleaner impression to begin with less cleanup and less residue left behind. Limitations to this particular powder are that, and I'll just open the jar up so we can see this. I'll put some powder on the brush. It primarily works more effectively on a vertical surface because it is magnetized powder that's simply just stuck to the tip of the wand. If you're using it on a vertical surface, for instance, you tend to lose powder. It drops off as you're using it on a vertical plane or doing on a vertical surface. So that's going to be a concern. As I said before, because you can reclaim the powder, you can see as I've just cleaned this back up, I've cleaned up the excess that's fallen off, and you can recharge it. Another downfall of this powder is that because you're reclaiming it, if you're using it on a contaminated surface, and we use blood as an example, if there was blood that's on the surface and you're reclaiming that powder, now you have contaminated with blood into your remaining powder. So another consideration of trying to maintain a healthy work environment is to avoid doing that. Now, so I've developed I put the impressions on the surface. I'm going to develop them now. So before we get into that, I should just mention that one other limitation with the powder is using it on a metal surface. And I'll see if we have, I'll come back to this in a minute because I don't have any metallic surfaces that I can use right now. I'm not going to use the case. And I'll demonstrate how that is problematic as we go through. So let's get back to the actual prints. I've got prints on the surface here. I've charged up the magnetic applicator. And you're not trying, when you're applying the powder, I'm just demonstrating this as a way not to do it. So you're not trying to shake the powder onto the surface. You want to use the powder collectively as the ball that's on there, and use it much like the bristles of a paintbrush. So I'm going to reclaim all of that powder, or some of it, and I'll recharge the brush here to demonstrate the actual proper application. So please don't be doing this kind of thing. This is not the intent of the brush. Likewise, if you have an area that you're developing, you don't put the tip of the wand on the surface and drag it across, because now you're going to scratch or distort the impression. Use it collectively like a ball or the bristles of a brush, and lightly brush over the surface. So I'll just do it where the impressions are here. You can see it comes up very easily. very little excess that's on there, and now you can simply do the same thing. Without touching the actual surface, just allow the magnet to pick up the excess and then reclaim it back into the jar. Likewise with the granular powders, you can simply blow on the surface to clean any leftover residue that might appear on the surface. So we have our impressions developed now. Just going to set our powder aside, and because I only have 2 digits this time and the coverage is fine using a smaller diameter tape, I'm going to demonstrate using this. So because it is a light surface, we're using the dark powder, and you want obviously your backing card should be the same tone as what your surface is that you're lifting the prints off of. So again, holding the loose end, pulling off an amount, applying it onto the surface here. I'm just going to I'll use my blade of my hand this time to demonstrate the other option here. So again, just over the surface, making contact. You can see that there are some artifacts such as air bubbles and whatnot that are appearing there. You can simply, and I'll do it here so that you can see how this works, and then I'll flatten it out using the credit card when I put it on the backing card. So you can see how just by ironing it out with your finger and working from the inside outward, you can see all those void spots start to disappear as you make better contact with the impression, and it makes it a much more clear impression with less artifacts on it. Tape tore here, so I'll peel it off. You see the impressions are there now. And move this out of the way. Get our hard surface, so I'll put the prints on the edge, iron that down, and now backing card, slide that into the edge. See what's happened here, it's let loose from the surface, so I'll reapply it back onto the surface again, slide the backing card in, and this time I'll use the T-card as a demonstration to apply the tape onto the surface, and just simply iron it across the surface like that. Now also with this, I'm going to just demonstrate using the scissors to clean it up as opposed to tearing it as I did with the other one. And the prints are secure.